Welcome to the Module 6 team in service. Using last week's foundation of ethical principles and the ethical values that guide an interprofessional team, we will determine and analyse ethical behaviours, barriers and tolerance relating to the interprofessional team. Understanding the following definitions is important: ethical barrier, ethical tolerance, personal reflection, bias, and constructive feedback. Ethical decision-making helps people make difficult choices when faced with an ethical dilemma, a situation in which there is no clear right or wrong answer. May's 9 steps of ethical decision-making give us a framework to guide us through the process. First, gather the facts. When you do this, be sure not to jump to conclusions without the information. Ask the questions who, what, where, when, how, and why. Facts may be difficult to find because of the uncertainty often found around ethical issues. Some facts are not available. Assemble as much data as possible before proceeding, and clarify what assumptions you are making. Next, we need to define the ethical issues without jumping to solutions. Define the ethical basis for the issue you want to focus on. There may be multiple ethical issues, so focus on one major one at a time. Step 3. Identify the affected parties or stakeholders. Ask, who are the primary or direct stakeholders? Who are the secondary or indirect stakeholders? Why are they stakeholders for the issue? Think about perspectives. Try to see things through the eyes of those individuals affected. Next, identify consequences. Think about potential positive and negative consequences for the parties affected by the decision. Until you become comfortable with the process, you should focus on primary stakeholders to simplify analysis. What is the extent of the consequences and the probability that the consequences will happen? Think about the short-term versus the long-term consequences and whether the decision will be valid over time. Broader systemic consequences are connected to symbolic, whereas secrecy consequences refer to the consequences if the decision or action becomes public. Did you consider relevant cognitive barriers or biases? Consider what your decision would be based only on consequences. Then move on and see if it is similar given other considerations. In step 5, identify the obligations of principles, rights and justice. Obligations should be thought of in terms of principles and rights involved. What obligations are created because of particular ethical principles you might use in this situation? Examples would be: do no harm, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, do what you would have anyone in your situation do in the given context. What obligations are created because of the specific rights of the stakeholders? What rights are more basic versus secondary in nature? Which help protect an individual's basic autonomy? What types of rights are involved, and are they negative or positive? What concepts of justice or fairness are relevant? Think about distributive or procedural justice. Did you consider any relevant cognitive barriers or biases? Formulate the appropriate decision or action based solely on the above analysis of these obligations. In step 6, you are asked to consider your character and integrity. Do this by thinking what your relevant community members would consider to be the kind of decision that an individual of integrity would make in this situation. What specific virtues are relevant in this situation? What about the disclosure rule? What would you do if the New York Times reported your action and everyone was to read it? Think about how your decision will be remembered when you are gone. Did you consider any relevant cognitive biases or barriers? What decision would you come to based solely on character considerations? Step 7 requires you to think creatively about potential actions. Be sure you have not been unnecessarily forced into a corner. You may have some choices or alternatives that have not been considered. If you have come up with solutions A and B, try to brainstorm and come up with a C solution that might satisfy the interests of the primary parties involved in the situation. Next, check your gut. Even though the prior steps have argued for a highly rational process, it is always good to check your gut. How do you feel? Intuition is gaining credibility as a source for good decision making, knowing something is not right. This is particularly relevant if you have a lot of experience in the area and are considered an expert at decision making. In the next step, you need to decide on the proper ethical action and be prepared to deal with opposing arguments. Think ahead to consider potential actions based on the consequences, obligations, and character approaches. Do you come up with similar answers from the different perspectives? Do the obligation and character help you check the result preferred action? How can you protect the rights of those involved or your own character while still maximizing the overall good for all of the stakeholders? What arguments are most compelling to you to justify the action ethically? How will you respond to those with opposing viewpoints? Consequences of ethical barriers caused by ethical intolerance include disrespect of each other, antisocial behavior, abuse of others and bullying, loss of personal self-worth, loss of team self-worth, ineffective problem solving, and ineffective team productivity, which results in the team goal not being reached. Ethical barriers are caused by an intolerance of others' differences. These differences include beliefs, values, experiences, expertise, culture, religion, and uniqueness. We can remove ethical barriers by understanding our own ethical perspectives and respecting the unique cultures, values, roles and responsibilities, and expertise of other health professions. As a team, develop consensus on the ethical principles to guide all aspects of patient care and teamwork. Ensure effective communication occurs and demonstrate supportive behaviour. Individual supportive behaviour occurs when you personally reflect on your own behaviour and express yourself explicitly without bias. Do not allow the culture of a person to define who they are. Find out who they are. Learn about common role overlaps, share work and discussions, and demonstrate friendliness and kindness, and give constructive feedback. Team supportive behaviour is achieved by team reflection. Is there inclusion of all team members and encouragement of idea sharing? Can you identify mutual trust, respect and valuing? Is there evidence of the team embracing cultural diversity and differences? Can you recognise cooperation between team members, honesty and integrity between team members, and appropriate addressing of ethical dilemmas? Communicating as a team member means you treat others as belonging to the team, as equals. Team members are included in social interactions. There is encouragement to share individual role and responsibilities education in services or discussions. Be explicit about team ethical expectations. Hold team debriefing sessions about team dynamics related to treatment of other team members, such as what worked well, what didn't work so well, and how to improve. Provide constructive feedback. Constructive team feedback is very important. It should be information specific, issue focused, and based on observations. When providing feedback, be direct, be sincere, and give no mixed messages. Give praise with examples. Show concern if something didn't go well, and create awareness that can lead to correction or improvements. Always provide feedback in person, not by telephone, email, or text. State observations, not interpretations, and be explicit. Audre Lorde, the civil rights activist, wrote, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." Thank you for attending this in-service. Ethics is an ever-growing subject that moves and changes as societal values evolve. What you learned this week will help you reflect as you consider the questions of the Module 6 case scenario and the unfolding scenario questions in the coming weeks. In addition, you will be able to apply what you've learned to the Test Your Knowledge quizzes and activities. See you at the next in-service and have a great nursing shift.